All right, we are live here for the first time. I'm RJ. This is a news show from HRN called Amuse News. I'm your host, RJB. I am the executive director of Heritage Radio Network, otherwise known as HRN. So I took over about 6 months ago, and I'm personally on an adventure through the food world, learning, talking, listening, eating. This podcast will go live and publish 3 times a week. My goal is to bring you conversations and insights with people from across the food world, including chefs, writers, advocates, HRN's own hosts, interns, advisors, and more. There may be some trivia. There's going to be entertainment. It's going to be fun. There'll be mandatory fun starting today. But I'm really excited. I really wanted to kind of try and bring my perspective to some of the stuff we're up to here at HRN, and also learn. So this is going to be a fun experiment, and I'm glad that you all are on this adventure with us. We are celebrating our 15th year as an organization this year, and part of the idea behind this show is that this organization actually started as a food radio network. I think some people might know that, but it started in the back of Roberta's Pizza. A few friends who were just chefs and food professionals, and they wanted to talk about what was going on in the food world, and they basically just started broadcasting, and they started broadcasting live for several hours a day. We're not going to do that, but we're going to try to keep that spirit alive because that's where this thing started. And although we do a lot of different things now, we wanted to kind of bring that back. So to introduce you, this is called Amuse News, your destination for food news and conversation. Like I said, this will be released as a podcast. If you're streaming live, thanks for checking us out, and participate in the comments, throw in some questions, things like that. I'm going to have a guest, an amazing guest that I'm going to bring on in just a few minutes, but I'm going to try and start every show by giving you a little bit of food news. So this is again me kind of seeing what's going on in the food world, and learning and all that. So I'm going to try to give you a few pieces of news that are happening in the food world. There's a lot going on out there, and it's not always fun, great news, but I think we should bring you what is insightful and what's actually going on out there. So we'll get into that, and then I'm going to bring a guest on, and a guest is someone that I've known since I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, but who also happens to be one of the people that I think about most often when I think about food and the food world and food experiences. So I think you're going to like it. Um, the first piece of food news that I wanted to share is that overnight we learned about some tragic news that members of the World Central Kitchen team were killed in an airstrike while working to support humanitarian food delivery efforts in Gaza. Our hearts go out to the World Central Kitchen team and all the other people who were, injured and who have been injured and kidnapped, and everything that's happened in the Middle East over the past several months. It's tragic, and we just wanted to mention that and say that we're thinking about everyone. And in our interview a bit later, we're actually going to talk to someone who volunteers around the world for the organization, completely coincidentally, but we can hear a little bit about the work of the organization. One thing that I think is notable is that there's sort of in pop culture, the way I see it about food, we see Top Chef, we see shows on the Food Network, we see shows like The Bear, that show the difficult and triumphant side of food. But of course, there are people out there around the world putting themselves in harm's way to make sure that people have access to food. As I mentioned, our guest Mike has some insight into the work as he's volunteered in a lot of different places for World Central Kitchen, but it's interesting to me that a lot of what we know about international food aid started after World War II. The World Food Program, which was established in 1961, George McGovern, I think the worst faring presidential candidate of all time. He was the director of the U.S. Food for Peace program, and he proposed establishing this multilateral food aid program, and that's where WFP came from. And it reached a record $14.1 billion in funding in 2022, which was up by 50% from the previous year, but the need worldwide was estimated to be at 21.4 billion. The U.S. is the largest donor to that, but you'll see that there's such a difference between what is needed and what's out there. And we don't have time to get into all the reasons why the need for food aid has increased so much. I mean, international politics, war, climate change, etc. But food really does touch every aspect of international and life in the U.S. And of course, the World Food Program, World Central Kitchen are just two of the organizations addressing food issues. But as the need increases and as our world continues to change, the more people that step in to help, the better. So again, sending our thoughts to the World Central Kitchen team and to all the people working hard to try and provide food with people who need it. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears slightly here. As you might imagine, we talk a lot about podcasts around here, and I wanted to recommend a podcast from Decoder Ring from Slate. The HRN team has been talking about this. The episode's called "Why Do So Many Coffee Shops Look the Same?" It's kind of a wild story, but talks about something I've noticed, and I'm sure you've noticed, which is the strange similarity of coffee shops all over. I've noticed it in the U.S., but apparently it's all over the world. This journalist Kyle Chayka wrote this book called Filter World: How Algorithms Are Flattening Culture. And on this podcast, he talks about the history of the cafe as a way to look at digital behavior and how that's changing a physical space that's hundreds of years old. It's a pretty crazy listen. You can find Decoder Ring wherever you listen to podcasts, but I think listening to this will make you look at that fancy design in your latte a little differently next time. Really changed my perspective on kind of how our life is changing because of the digital world. Okay. Speaking of podcasts, we have our flagship podcast called Meat and Three coming back next week. You're going to hear more about it in our next episode when I talk to two HRN employees helping to create the show, but wanted to give you a quick preview. So here at HRN, we are recommitting to our mission to empower food systems storytellers. What that means is that people who want to tell food stories, we help these amazing people build skills like audio engineering, production, journalism, research, really how to make an audio product like a podcast. And this podcast, Meat and Three, is like the output of this internship program. And interns bring story ideas, report them, produce them. The topics are really across the board. I've been listening to the current group of interns talk about this and work on upcoming episodes of the show. And it's really cool to see this kind of experiential learning in action. So Meat and Three will be back next week. For those of you who are longtime HRN supporters, you'll know this show. But if you don't, subscribe and you'll hear the work of people who are really kind of learning how to tell stories in a different way and learning how to hone their voice. And it's just a really cool initiative. And that's part of kind of our broader initiative to increase food training and education programs. And the last thing I'm going to mention before we bring our guest on is that I said at the beginning, we're celebrating our 15th anniversary as an organization. And part of what we're doing, we created this fundraising campaign that is offering people who donate unique food and music experiences in various cities. So if you donate to HRN to support this education work I'm talking about, you can be entered to win dinner for two and 2 tickets to a concert in the city of your choice. So we have 8 cities to choose from. But today I'm going to talk briefly about one of those places, which is Ardmore, Pennsylvania, near and dear to my heart because it's a couple miles down the road here. I do a lot of shows there. I go there a lot. But if you donate and you choose Ardmore, here's what you would win. There's a restaurant called Ripplewood. It's a great restaurant, throwback to kind of the classic whiskey bar, but with really great comfort food and awesome cocktails. And then next door to Ripplewood is the Ardmore Music Hall, which again, one of my favorite places to see music. It's one of the best independent music venues in the country, 40 or more years as a rock club. It's just a couple miles outside Philly. They have everything. They have rock, funk, jam, roots, adult contemporary, hip hop, a lot of tribute bands, Americana. So you could get dinner at Ripplewood, go next door to Ardmore Music Hall, check out a show. But you can go to heritageradionetwork.org/15 to check out that campaign. So that's kind of my news for today. And I guess I'm just gonna pause briefly and bring on my friend Chef Mike, who I'm not going to bring on yet because I want to do a quick intro. So my food journey personally has been influenced by many people. I've worked as a dishwasher and a bus boy and a server, and that's about the extent of my food experience. But when I think about food, I think about my wife, who's an awesome cook and can really do anything without recipes, which is mind blowing. But the other person who always comes to mind is my friend Mike Lund, who is joining us today. He maybe best known. I don't know if best known is the right way to put it, but he is known for his role as executive sous chef at the Inn at Little Washington, which is a 3 Michelin star restaurant based outside of DC, and also known for being one of the first people I met in 4th grade in Miss Queenan's class at Central Elementary in Sylvania, Ohio. I don't know which of those accolades, Mike, is more interesting to you, working at the Inn at Little Washington or being my classmate in 4th grade.
I mean, I thought it was 3rd grade, but I definitely think, I think it's safe to say that if that hadn't happened, I probably never would have gone on to develop the chef skills that I did. So.
I think that's absolutely true. Mike, so thanks for joining us. This is our first episode. I really am like genuinely, well, first of all, I'm so like proud of you as what you've done with your career is really amazing. But when we were growing up, like I don't remember you being super interested in food or cooking, but we were just kids. And when you left Ohio and moved down to Tennessee, you ended up at culinary school, which I know you're the culinary school you went to, you're very proud of. But tell us how you got into cooking and what put you on this path to becoming a chef.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me today, RJ. Honored to be on your first show, and I love the name. It's super cute. So for me, growing up, we would my so I my family is all from the Philadelphia area, and we would go to the Jersey Shore, where my aunt and uncle had three different restaurants on in Avalon, and I would wash dishes and sweep the sidewalks, and they were younger, cooler than my parents, and they, worked hard and um, made good money, and I thought that, like, that was just a really dreamy, glamorous life. So I went on to have my own restaurant where I could wash dishes and sweep the sidewalks and not make a lot of money. But yeah, so that's how I, on an early age, kind of got into seeing that side of the life. I went to University of Tennessee for hotel restaurant administration, at which time I thought I wanted to run a big resort like the Homestead or the Greenbrier, and out of necessity, worked cooking, got more into it, realized that I kind of had some natural skill coupled with my interest in it, and before you know it, I was working as a sous chef at some of the finest bars and grills in Knoxville, Tennessee. Um, and I ended up leaving UT and starting at a community college there that had an accredited program, Walter State Community College, the Community College of the Smoky Mountains. And I did that and kind of excelled. And at the end of that, I needed to do an internship, and so I wrote three letters. I wrote one letter to the now defunct Lebec Finn in Philadelphia, uh, the French Laundry
Mm-hmm.
in Yountville, California, and the Inn at Little Washington, which I knew about the Inn at Little Washington because one of the chefs I worked for had their cookbook, and my girlfriend at the time had a Dalmatian, and that was Dalmatians was very intertwined into the Inn at Little Washington, their
Yeah,
mascots.
yeah, of course. So
Yeah,
you kept your targets very modest.
yeah. Well, hey, start where start at
Yeah.
the top, work your way down. So the executive sous chef at the time, a friend of mine now named Lawrence Gottlieb, who some people may know the famous Gottlieb's Bakery in Savannah. That was his family. He saw my letter. He liked it and appreciated the gumption of this hucklebuck from the Tennessee Community College, thinking that he could go work at one of the best restaurants in the world. And so I went up for what they call a stage, a tryout. And on the first day, they were prepping for Julia Child's 90th birthday celebration that was going to be at the Kennedy Center, and I had to go through and pit the cherries, and we tried to keep the stems together on the cherries that are already cooked. So I had to take a pastry tip and go in underneath and remove the pits out of the cherries so that the presentation would stay with the two stems there. And I did that. I didn't complain. My hands were dyed black for I think 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. And then the next day, the dishwasher didn't show up, and so I just had to wash dishes, which I'm really, really good at. And so
Yeah,
basically,
you are.
long, long story short, that sealed the deal, and I got the job. So I went back, and left over 7 years later. I started as a dishwasher, and I left as the executive sous chef, which at the time was the top position possible in the kitchen only to chef and proprietor Patrick O'Connell. So it's pretty cool because I can, I think I'm one of a few people that can say that they did absolutely every single possible station there, from the dishwasher up to the top position.
It's really amazing. I got to eat at the inn a few times, and I got to tour the kitchen where there was famously, I think, like the monk chants play. It's like one of those Zen quiet places, which is insane because of how much work is going on there. I remember the first time I went there, I had this like shrimp appetizer that was like curried shrimp. I don't know if you remember this, but it was like basically like I had probably 5 or 6 things that I've never tasted before in my life, and I was, 23 or something, so not surprising. But what was it like for you to like day to day creating like this really precise, beautiful food while like also, I mean, working insane hours and like how do you handle that stress and channel that into something that takes so much focus?
So those monks playing in the kitchen, I actually still have nightmares of those. um, so it definitely, it was a very hectic and challenging place to be. We used the term organized chaos. Everybody was working very fast, very hard, um, but it all kind of seamlessly came together in the end. So, which another saying we had is we would say the humans will never know, um, meaning like RJ's out there having this curried shrimp he's never had before, and you know doesn't know that some poor extern from the CIA cut her finger off and peeling all of these shrimp that arrived live. But no, it's just like the what happens in the, and I use as a poor analogy for what happens behind the scenes there is just the struggle to get off something that seems like it could be so simple and maybe perhaps even overseen by the end recipient. But it was a fairy tale place to be. I Prior to going there, I had an opportunity to go to another large and well renowned hotel resort, and I was interviewing with the chef there and told him that I had gone to the Inaugural Washington and hadn't had an opportunity there, and he just told me, he was like, yeah, just go there, don't come here. He's like, it's a fairy tale, it's make believe, just do it. And he's like, okay. So
Yeah,
yeah.
amazing.
But there, like the food and all the hard work and everything we put into it, like was so like the cooking was the easy part. It was the attention to detail, the what went into the service, the reading of people, anticipating needs of the guest, all that is stuff that it was instilled in me and really kind of taken with me throughout my career.
That's awesome. Thanks. Um,
Thank you.
I also know that you had people like because we're close to DC, and I lived there, nearby. You would tell me about like all these important people who would come through, but you also had like there's like lodging. You're creating a whole experience. It's not just a meal, right? So I think you would have like VIPs in there all the time. Do you have any? I know some of the stories you probably can't share, but are there any? Are there any VIP or notable tables or notable guests that you still remember from your years there?
Yeah, I do remember some, and I figure at this point it's been long enough ago that I signed a piece of paper saying I wouldn't talk about it. That I'm small fish fry now. But uh, one that I remember was pretty cool was then Governor, now Senator Warner's last night in office as governor, and came and had a big kitchen table. That was a really neat thing to be a part of. Uh, the Jack, I was gonna, the actor, not the golfer. Uh, that's
Jack
Nicholas, not Nicholson, right?
Nicholson, Jack Nicholson.
Okay, yeah. Uh, that was pretty cool. Like he came back and we lined up. We would call it a lineup where we would all stand. We would be in order. Tallest in the center out, and he came back and had his sunglasses on and did the like raised his brow. You know, it was just like, gents, like, so that was neat. One in particular that was I still remember. I on two different occasions, once in DC and another time back in Little Washington at the inn, we hosted a birthday party for then First Lady Laura Bush, who is an absolute delightful human. She is so nice. And so we had this big open reception ahead of time in the kitchen, and we all had to go through all these, different background checks and such, which was kind of normal for those of us who did a lot of, like I did a lot of like the traveling and special events. But all the Secret Service guys then during the reception, they were just walking around asking us for like cooking tips and trying all the food and everything. They didn't. Yeah, so that was funny. But you got to a point there, maybe perhaps like in the beginning of your podcasting career, like where something at first seems kind of intimidating, and but then the more you do it, you're just kind of like,
Yeah.
like after I moved on from the inn and went to a restaurant where I live now in Stanton, Zenadota. I remember Dave Matthews came to dinner, and like the servers were like, one of them like started crying. One of them got off work and came back to sit at the bar, and I was just like, I'm not sure some of the language I can use on here, but I was just like, dude, like this is normal. Who gives a shit? It's
Yeah.
Dave Matthews. So what? Like who cares? I was
Make
like,
good food.
yeah, exactly. And that's the point. You make the same food for everybody. You
Yeah.
make, you know, uh, Laura Bush, Dave Matthews, and RJB get the same curried shrimp,
That's so
right?
nice. It makes me
Yeah.
feel really important. Thank you.
You're
Um,
welcome.
I remember when you left the inn, and I remember that we had conversations, or maybe I would ask you like, you could go to New York and work at, you could basically go anywhere. You could have gone anywhere in the world and worked at, any of these restaurants. You could have gone on Top Chef. I really wanted you to be on Top Chef because I think you would have won. But you never had any interest in that part, but probably entertained the idea of going to, a different restaurant in a different part of the world or something. But decided to like stay in Stanton, where you've worked at, restaurants and started your own restaurant and catering company. Why did you not like continue on that path of like the kind of the chefs that we would read about in, in the newspaper, on social media?
Yeah, that is a great question. Shortest and easiest answer to that would be fatherhood.
Hmm.
I had
Yep.
while I was at the inn, I had my dear daughter Zella, whom you know well. She popped right out on my 30th birthday, and here I was running one of the most important restaurant kitchens in the world, and then I had working 12 hours a day and came home to a colicky baby.
Yep.
So
Yep.
um, that coupled with Rappahannock County outside of DC is extremely expensive. The uh, cost of property out there is really high. I was, wanted to own my own house, was trying to buy a house, get this baby, and the opportunity came along for me to come to Stanton, which for people who haven't been to Stanton before in the Shenandoah Valley, it's just an absolutely amazing small city, and I fell in love with it. Fell in love with the old architecture. The people are kind. The location is great. We have an amazing food scene for a small city of 26,000 people. We have amazing music festivals that are world renowned, and so that that for me was I kind of always felt like I should go to New York and bang around in those kitchens there. But in my time at the inn, we would go to New York all the time and do special dinners and stuff, and I got a taste of that. And I love Virginia. I love the Shenandoah Valley. I don't like traffic, so I just kind of, what you said about like the Top Chef and all that. It just was not me. I want to be respected within my field, but I don't really care about. I really cared about being famous or being known. I want to be respected amongst my peers, but um, it's just not. It's just not what interested me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just the fact that Stanton was the birthplace of President Woodrow Wilson that brought you there. But then I went and visited, and it's a really amazing place.
It is, yes.
It's a really great place. Mike,
Yeah.
you've done a lot. You've worked at various restaurants. You started your own restaurant and catering company, as I mentioned, and done a bunch of other stuff. But right now, I know over the past 2 years, you've been basically like kind of on call, like for World Central Kitchen. You just get up and like you'll text me and be like, "Hey, I'm going to Poland or I'm going to wherever," and you've worked around the world. And I'm sorry to hear about the event that we talked about earlier. But um, tell us about your work with World Central Kitchen, just what you're up to and what the experience has been like.
Yes, it has been a absolutely life-changing experience for me. Um, real fast version, owned and ran my own restaurant catering business for almost 11 years. After the pandemic, chose to close that, sell my real estate, and I started teaching community college culinary school. And through that, I had summers off. And when the Russia attacked Ukraine and seeing everything going on, I was, watching the news and getting angry about it. I've known about World Central Kitchen, from being a chef in the DC area. I've known um, Chef Andreas. I don't know him personally. I've cooked for him multiple times as a minion over the years. Um, but I knew about World Central Kitchen, and I saw these opportunities to go volunteer in Przemyśl, Poland. Don't try and spell it. Which is right on the Ukrainian border where they were bringing in refugees. They had makeshift customs set up there, and so I felt compelled to, stop complaining to my wife about it and go do something, right? Actually, I put my volunteer money where my mouth was. So I went to Przemyśl, Poland, in southeastern Poland, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's like Stanton, Virginia, but in Poland. Really cool old architecture, and went to the kitchen. We were making several thousand meals a day, several thousand sandwiches a day. I met incredible people just like me from all over the world who were there because they wanted to make a difference. And it just completely, through teaching, I had already kind of taken a turn, and then the teaching coupled with my work with World Central Kitchen just completely changed my outlook on food and my role in it. So much that I alluded to this before. Awards and accolades, I just considered trivial and didn't really appeal to me anymore so much as seeing food as community service, as humanitarian work, and as education, which is how I see my role in it moving forward now, which is cool because and everything that I've done throughout my career prepared me to be in this position where I am now.
Yeah.
So I went back to Poland a second time because I left. I came home and I just like felt this emptiness, like the mission was incomplete, and my wife was very supportive and was like, "Well, go back," and I was like, "Okay," so I did. And then after that, I came back and they asked me to come to. I went to Hazard, Kentucky, and worked for floods there, and then they were extremely active in the uh, earthquakes in Turkey. I was up until this point, for the largest activation. I was unable to participate in that because I still had my my academic year job, and yeah. Then after that, I've had the opportunity to go to Greece for wildfires, which was incredible. Because it's just a neat opportunity to go somewhere and immerse yourself in a culture. It's different than being a tourist, and you don't necessarily get to choose where you go, right? You go
Yeah.
there, but then you get to meet the people affected, and learn so much more than if you were to just go down to the Woodrow Wilson Museum and go to the World War I bunker exhibit,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, Florida for Hurricane Idalia, and then after that, went to Morocco to the base of the Atlas Mountains for almost 2 months to work after the devastating earthquake, and that was, all these things, already kind of going back to what I said about kind of changing my outlook on life and everything. And my time in Morocco was just absolutely incredible. People that didn't have a whole lot to begin with and lost everything, and yet still their zeal for life, how much they still cared about food and the importance of a meal and making the best. It just was extremely inspirational to see just how they kept their attitudes up after, some of them lost everything, homes, loved ones. Everybody that we worked with there had lost someone in their family. Many of them, multiple people in their family and their homes. So, yeah, just an incredible experience, and it's an incredible organization. What they do, like you said in the intro, it was completely coincidental that you and I are talking today after we got, I got this horrible news last night, which is just devastating because, some of the people I know well, it was really, really hard. And I know a lot of people who know them even better, have spent a lot of time with them and are hurting really bad right now.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. And like I said at the beginning, we're all thinking about this. I mean, just so much people putting themselves in harm's way to try and, do the right thing, which is, admirable and oftentimes like tragic like this,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad. I mean, it's interesting that you took kind of the long hours and hard work that you had done in kitchens for a long time and put that into like something where you feel like you're not just serving, amazing Michelin star food. You're like you're putting in the same amount of work, probably if not more, but feeling like you're helping people.
Definitely, for sure, yeah. And then the activations are and can be extremely challenging. All of them are different, but the reward is so much more. Knowing that you're helping people and making a difference to people who truly in need is you can't put a price tag on that or a
Yeah.
monetary value.
Well, thanks for doing all that work. I want to ask you quickly before we go, do you have a favorite current recipe?
A recipe. God, this is gonna sound cheesy, but there was I for a month ago or 6 weeks ago, for the first time made a recipe out of a cooking magazine. I famously, amongst my foodie friends, I don't watch the Food Network and all that, but there's this one pot pasta bake in Bon Appetit where you add the raw pasta, milk, water, frozen broccoli, cheese, and everything, and it was absolutely delicious.
Wow. All right.
So
You can just find that Bon Appetit
yeah,
one pot pasta?
yes. I mean,
Okay.
I could start digging around my dining room table here,
No,
right?
we'll make people look for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, but I mostly just cook, kind of like you were saying about your wife, Rachel B. You're saying about she just cooks. I just cook. I take my foundation of what I know how to do. I'm really good at eating something and then recreating it. And so people always like, oh, you have to give me that recipe. I was like, well, that would mean I'd have to sit down and type that recipe up because it lives in here, you know?
Or you can just cook it for the people like you do for us, which we always appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sorry, that was a pretty lame answer.
No, I think it's good. I appreciate it. And I'm gonna look up that recipe because I know that Rachel trusts your judgment on recipes because neither of you use them. So we will try to find it. Well, thank you, Mike, for joining me on this inaugural episode of this podcast. It was just fun. I'm sure we could talk for another hour, but I'll have you back if you will be back.
Of course I will. It was so wonderful to see you, and I wish you all the luck with this endeavor, and you guys are doing really great work and getting good word out as well. So I appreciate all that you do.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
All right, so that was episode 1. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're listening on the audio, subscribe and review Amuse News wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching, thank you. Share what you see. If you have ideas for things you think we should talk about, you can hit us up on Instagram or X or Facebook, Heritage Radio. We'll be back on Thursday. We're going to dive into podcast production, food podcast production, and storytelling with a couple of my colleagues. So until then, hope everybody has a good week. Thanks so much.